we might just start with the introductions as people keep joining us, because we are live on Facebook, and time is precious, and I know you've got much to go through. So welcome everyone. This is so exciting. This is our first event of our International Month on Families. So for those of you who don't know, May 15th is International Day of Families, and we've decided to make a whole month of it. And largely a reason for that is because we want to celebrate and promote and ensure that peer-led models and parents and families are involved more than ever as we evolved early intervention from here forward, which makes it totally relevant, and why we have kicked off the month with, I'm just going to say it, the best program rocking around that involves peer-led workers that I have ever seen in practice. And I'm so excited that you've all joined me today. Before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge that we are meeting across Australia and across our short little sea with our fellows in New Zealand. And so just honouring the land that we're all standing on and that we are webinaring in from today. I'm calling in from Wathaurong land in the Kulin Nation, and I give my deep respect and reverence to the traditional owners and custodians of the land. So before we begin, I'm sick of my own voice and face on this screen by all of this webinaring. So I'm so excited that you're leading the show today. So before I sort of vanish into the background, which is a magical thing that webinars allow me to do, I just wanted to introduce you all. So to all the attendees there, thank you so much for being here. This is the magical team of Plumtree Learning. And we've got up the top, well, this is the top for me because I'm in a Brady Bunch sort of esque square here. But we have to the top left, we have Clayton. Clayton Perfoni is the Business and Development Consultant at Plumtree Learning. Then we have Annick, so Dr. Annick. Oh, I was just about to cancel the recording. That would be Dr. Annick Janson is the Research Director and the co-founder. And then we have Mogi. Mogi Bias-Skalan is the Data Analyst and Research Coordinator. Then we have Nicole Perfoni is the Lead Trainer, Facilitator and Content Creator. And of course, Sylvana Mahmic, the CEO and the co-founder. So welcome everybody. There is in the chat, for those of you that have joined, there is a link to the slide share where you can see everyone's faces and their roles. And I'd love to spend an hour and a half going on a love story about all of these people, but we'll get straight into the detail and it will emerge about how magic they are. So I'm going to vanish into the background and hand it over to you, Sylvana, I believe, to kick it off.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome everybody, and thank you very much to ECIA for inviting us and for acknowledging the role of families by celebrating this month with, around families and the topic of families. I just also wanted to say that the panel here today are all parents of children with disabilities. We're all peer workers in some form or another. And I think that it's a real wonderful opportunity to be kicking off your month with talking about a By Families for Families program now and next in an online environment. So without going back into history, Annick and I are both mothers of young men who are adults now, well and truly adults who have disabilities. Corinne, my son, is almost 30, and Annick's son is in his mid-20s. I think he's 26 now. And we met in 2015 and we just got talking. We met at a research conference and we got talking about our children, and she was doing a story where she filmed the experiences of families of children with disabilities so that they could learn from one another. And when I saw her presentation, it just immediately connected with me, because I thought that is so powerful, that connecting families of children with other families who've had experience just is all about not not reinventing the wheel. It's not rocket science, but it's really about sort of acknowledging the role that families have in sharing their experiences with one another. And once we got chatting, the first thing that really struck both of us was we said to each other, it's amazing that when your child's diagnosed with a disability, that the fun is just zapped completely out of our lives. Everyone was serious, everything was serious. I really felt the weight of the severity of my son's disability on me just by the way people were talking and relating to me. And up until 2 years old, he didn't have a diagnosis of disability. Up until then, he was just my son. But after the diagnosis, I really felt I should be taking more note, because this was really bad and this was really serious. And so fun went out of the window, and I became really intensely focused on trying to help my son do all of the things that it was clear that he wasn't able to do. And I guess the other big lesson I think that we learned along with fun disappearing was the ability to focus on our children's strengths, and not just us to focus on our strengths, but others to focus on our strengths. And for that to kind of, keep guiding us in terms of where we're going with our children, just not now, but also into the future. So we co-founded a program called Now and Next. It started with the vision setting experience to help families to set a positive and hopeful vision for their son or daughter. And it sort of became very soon clear to us that one program and one vision setting experience is not enough, that families need to be sustained by a peer network. And so families who have graduated from the Now Next program become a part of an alumni where they meet together and connect and hopefully inspire each other to keep going. So we did develop Now and Next and Pictability for families of very young children with disabilities to help them get off to the right start by meeting other families, but also seeing family leadership in action by having the program presented by peer facilitators and peer leaders. But we've also in the past few years been working on developing an adaptation of the program and the resources so that they suit families of school-aged children as well. And we've done some piloting with that, and that's really progressing as well. We look forward to talking to you sometime in the future about that. It is, in our view, sort of interpreting family-centered practice through a slightly different lens. So I think we'll all agree, I agreed, I believed that what we were doing in our early intervention organisation was already family-centered. Yep, it was a journey, we were on our way. But I did truly believe that this was the way we did it, and this is the way we did it. And so one of my big insights over the last 5 years is that there is always room for questioning the way we do things, for reinventing the way we do things. And I believe that for our sector, the future lies in placing the voice of families front and centre of what we do and how we co-design with them, as we did with this program. I look forward into the future for our sector to do much more co-design with families, and that's including a commitment that we've got at Plumtree as well. So that's just a little introduction. I'd just like to cue in a little video clip, which is just very short. It's 1.5 minutes, which has been produced by families for families. You'll recognise some of the people in the video clip. Thank you, Mogi.
I have a story to tell you.
Meron akong kwento para sa iyo.
我同你講一個故事啊。When my daughter was born, they called us in.
After the diagnosis, the doctor said,
my son would not walk.
They said she may not talk.
That our life was going to be really challenging.
I felt completely overwhelmed.
We didn't really know where to go, who to listen to, and what steps we needed to take.
I was searching the internet every night.
every single night.
And the more I read, the more my heart sank.
Everyone was telling me what my son couldn't achieve.
But then I joined a program called Now and Next.
As parents, we imagined what would have helped us when our children were little. So we developed Now and Next.
We wanted to give families hope for a future with possibilities.
But we also wanted to ensure that the program was robust and evidence-based.
So we turned to positive psychology. First, the families develop goals and then the strategies to achieve them.
We give families the tools to build on their strengths so that they understand what to do to help their child thrive and progress.
During the program, I learnt skills that helped me achieve the best outcomes for my son.
I learned how to work with our supports and therapists to achieve what's best for my son.
We had the space, the time, and the permission to work out what we wanted as a couple and how we could achieve that.
The biggest lesson I learned was that looking after myself and the other people in my family helped our daughter too.
We came to believe
That our children have a lot of strengths.
And that we had the ability to change their futures.
Together, as a network of parents,
We grew stronger.
Lumakas kami.
我哋成家都安心啲。
I looked at my parent facilitator and the other parents in the room, and I thought, if they can do this, I can too.
By the end of the course, I thought to myself,
I've got this. I've got this.
We've got this.
I've got this.
Thanks for that, Mogi. Before introducing our next speaker, I'd just like to say a few words about peer workers. So I mentioned at the top of the session today that everyone on the panel is a parent of a child with a disability. We have trained over 30 peer workers over the last 5 years, and those peer workers, not all of them right now, but those peer workers work alongside our early childhood intervention teams at Plumtree, and they provide a complementary service to the traditional early childhood intervention services that we know of. So I'd like to introduce our lead trainer and facilitator and content creator, Nicole for the next couple of slides.
Hi everyone, thanks Sylvana. So I wanted to talk you guys through, I guess, exactly what the program structure looks like, because I think often you're not really sure maybe what now and next is. It can seem like a support group and it is quite different to a kind of typical support group. There is a manual and we have an agenda that we work to, and I just wanted to kind of jump through what exactly our 8-session program looks like. So we start in session 1 with setting a vision using our wonderful tool Pictability, which we'll show you a little clip of shortly. And for parents, this is a really important session where they come in and they think about what they want, what their big picture is. And I know I'll talk more about myself later, but Clayton and I definitely enjoyed that first time to kind of sit down and think about the big picture and what was important to us long term, because early on, often everyone's sort of very busy running around to therapy sessions and looking very short term. So it's nice to set a vision in that first session. And we also don't just focus on the child, we focus on the family as a whole, and also the individual as well. So making sure that we prioritize that the 3 are important, and talking to families, often they don't necessarily want to set themselves a goal, that for the mums and dads particularly don't want to set their own individual goal. They just want to focus on the child, and they'll have 1,000 child goals and no goals in the family or personal corner. So yeah, that's an important first point. So that's week 1. So then we move over into the second session, where we look at breaking down those goals into the next step. So that's your big vision, and what's your first tiny little step to get there, and how do we feel good, and how do we know that we've achieved it? And we start with family goal because it's often a little bit easier than the child goal. So we get families to focus in on one particular thing that they're going to do with their child, with their whole family, that will help them get to their big vision. And we look at the NDIS outcomes for families in this week as well, which we find is a really lovely framework. And we do use our tool for breaking down goals called our Goal to Action 5-window approach, which is a template that we use that really gets parents working collaboratively with other people, their professionals, and it helps them work out how they're actually going to achieve those goals. So that's the second week. Third week, we focus in on the child goal. And we look at best outcomes for children and how we break down those goals and how we work with professionals to work out what that next step might be for our child goals. And then we look at, in 4, 5, and 6, we focus in on positive psychology. So Annick Janson, Dr. Annick Janson will talk to you some more about the positive psychology framework from which we use. But the focusing on the signature strengths, it's interesting. Sylvana was mentioning just before about how things get very serious when you first get the diagnosis, and that was certainly the case for me. And when I got to signature strengths are a Martin Seligman idea where he looks at our 24 signature strengths, for those of you who don't know. And one of the signature strengths was zest. And I thought, I used to have zest. What happened to my zest? And I got very serious. I lost my sense of humor. So it was really great tapping into those signature strengths for me as mum and go, hang on, there's strengths that I've squished, getting very stressed and serious about driving across town to therapy. And this, very similar story to what Sylvana was saying. But yeah, so tapping into this positive psychology framework and thinking about our child's strengths and our own strengths, looking at our oxygen tank and how we can, best fill up our oxygen tank with focusing in on some of this positive psychology. It's not to say everything's, cheesy and rosy and wonderful. It's not just sticking on a happy face, which I think, you hear positive psychology, that might be what you think. It is actually about thriving and flourishing and looking at what's working and how you can build on that and how your children can build on that. So that's 4, 5, and 6 sessions. Really, I mean, it's sprinkled throughout, but we really draw into that positive psychology in those weeks. And then 7 is our partnering with professionals. So talking to families about what agency is, what does it mean to partner with professionals. And one of the things that I think I've learned, I guess, watching professionals is that it's actually hard for you professionals to get families to step in and to lean in. I think it's much easier for me as a mum, as a fellow mum, to say to another mum, this is what I would say, or this is what I've done in the past to help with, I would go to the therapist, or I would go to the school and I would say this or do this, and it gives other parents permission to lean into that relationship, because a lot of parents feel like that they shouldn't, that the professional knows everything and they shouldn't speak up. So I think the peer worker model is a lovely one in being able to complement the therapist and help other families lean in. So we've developed a parent professional relationship statement, which was developed by our peer workers, which is it's on our website. I'm sure we can share it. It's a great little kind of statement of what we believe, and we share that with our families, and we really get them looking at what they can do to progress the outcomes and what's important for them. And then 8 is our next steps session. So basically along the way of these 8 weeks, they've picked up a whole heap of tools that they can dip back into when they need to at certain points in their journey moving forward. So in this final session, we work out what those tools are and when we might use them in the future. And then obviously we also talk about the importance of our alumni and staying connected with each other. So that is basically a little bit of a framework of what we cover in the 8 sessions. So I think I'm handing over now to Sylvana if she's there. Oh no, we're going to do our little Pictability movie. So Mogi, I'll get you to share it. So this is what we do in the first session, and we've also been using this.
Life. Sometimes it doesn't go to plan, especially when you're the parent or carer of a child with a delay or disability. You seem to always be on the go, but left wondering if you're actually getting anywhere. What if we told you, you don't have to feel like this? Pictability allows you to catch your breath. Have a play, follow the steps, take your time. By the end, you'll be reconnected with what's important to you, your child, and your family without even realizing it. That's just how Pictability works. Pictability helps you turn what's important into what's achievable. What's achievable then turns into a map for a great life, your family's life. And before you know it, you're on your way.
Great. So that's Pictability. Yeah. So as I said, that's about setting our next big vision. That's my son. Yeah. So we formulate the big long-term vision with families. We prioritize 3 goals, which can be difficult for families to kind of only look at 3 goals. A lot, I guess, are wanting to do lots and lots of goals, and we talk through the importance of simplifying that down so that over the 8-week session they can actually feel the success of achieving their goals and the importance of that dopamine hit of achieving, knowing that you're moving towards your vision. And I'm sure Mogi will talk more about the success of that, but yeah, just bringing that down to those 3 important goals for the 8 sessions. And then, yeah, as we said, getting families collaboration ready. So getting them working with the therapist, with the schools, with professionals, so that obviously both sides of the table bring different experience and different perspectives. And if we work together, obviously, we all know that we can achieve better outcomes. So yeah, and then we look at looking at families learning to bring their expertise into that environment with professionals. So yeah, that's I guess the program in a nutshell there. What we're going to do now is talk through the time frame of the Now and Next program. So I might bring up the next slide there. Is Sylvana there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Nicole?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. So before we I'm happy, Mogi, if you pause the timeline and I can read off. And I think we got a little message from Anna McCracken to say it's nice for people to see faces. So I'm comfortable. I didn't want to say I'm comfortable if you see my face because it is very awkward, but we're just going to give everybody a break from looking at the slides. And apparently that's all much nicer to look at when you're on a webinar. And I'll just talk you briefly through the timeline of how, what we've been doing over the last 5 years. And basically in 2015, we started off prototyping and co-designing the Now and Next program using a one-to-one program that was delivered by professionals at Plumtree, working with families who were on our waiting list. And we co-designed the program with them and with families. And by the end of the year, we had 51, I think, families who had done Now and Next one-on-one. And then what happened then was we realized that there was something missing, and we built it into a group. So in 2016, the professionals were running our first group with families together. And at the end of the first couple of groups that we ran in that year, we at the end paused and asked the parents to give us feedback about how they thought it was and what we could improve, etc. And I remember one of the fathers sort of very boldly stood up at the end of the group when we were, evaluating, and said, this program should be run by parents of children with disabilities and not professionals. And it was quite a confronting moment because there were professionals employed by Plumtree who had co-designed the program the year before and had been really heavily committed and involved and dedicated to really working in partnership with families to build what then became the group program. And I guess that was a turning point for us all, because we realized at that point that feedback was was really valid, and so we embraced that. And then the next groups that we ran, we started building what we call a leadership pipeline. Families who've done the program, who exhibit family leadership and meet a series of criteria that we have in our matrix, respected by their peers, and really sort of engaging with them and helping them to understand the course content, etc. We tap those participants on the shoulder and say, would you like to undertake some training and become facilitators of the Now Next program? And that was how we got our first group of parents who became Now Next facilitators. And Nicole, you were one of the very early facilitators as well. And so from 2016, the program was run by families, for families completely. We then very quickly in 2017 started formalizing the training for families. In 2018, we had a couple of international hubs, one in New Zealand and one in Canada. Later on in 2018, we also took the program online. We realized that whilst nothing replaces a face-to-face opportunity to meet with parents, there is so much engagement. And I chuckle because I have tried over my 23, 25 years of experience in early intervention as a mother, but as an early intervention professional, I've tried to reach out and to convince parents that connecting with other parents is not a waste of time. It is an important opportunity, but I just watch their blank faces because they're in those moments where they think that only a professional can help them. So, running the Now Next program in a by families, for families way, but leading with setting a vision and having goals for your child was just really a sneaky way for us to kind of get the families in. But we knew that the true value of what would happen was not just sort of, being redirected with a positive vision and focusing on your child's strengths and tapping into who you are as a person, who your child is as a person. But we just thought through this process, they are going to realize how powerful it is and how wonderful it is to be connected with other parents. And of course, that does happen. And the real magic, I think, really happens because the program allows enough space for families to connect with one another and support one another. The facilitators are facilitating. They're actually not teaching. It's the structure of the parents doing things within the session with each other that actually helps them to understand what they can tap into themselves in terms of their own strengths, but also what they can give to others. And that kind of giving and receiving at a peer level is really the essence of what we were trying to achieve. So by the end of 2019, we'd also developed online pictability training, and in the beginning, so at the end of last year, at Plumtree, we incorporated pictability and the introduction of peer workers into our service design pathway. So when families make a call to Plumtree, they'll have a couple of phone calls, and now their welcome visit is not only conducted with our customer relationship manager, but it is also conducted with a peer worker. And the moment that they get together, the peer worker does a pictability session with the family, and then we use the results from that pictability session to link the family to their key worker or therapist in their first session with their therapist to work on their NDIS goals. So we've now kind of figured out a way. It took us years to figure out a way to actually incorporate the kind of experiences that we were developing into our service design. So that's a little snapshot of where we've been in the last 5 years. I'd just like to sort of flag what will happen with the rest of the session. So we do plan to finish before 1:30 or by 1:30, and there will be time for questions. But in the next sort of little while, I'll be handing over to our research director, Dr. Annick Janson, to talk a little bit with you about the theory and the evidence base. And she'll just do that for a few slides. She'll hand over to Mogi, who will take you through the data that we've collected for the program, which is being run online. And I think that you'll find that really interesting because we're all grappling at the moment with the online environment and the wave of telehealth as being the predominant way that many of us are engaging with families now, and we're all wondering where's this going to lead and what's life going to be like, from here on end. Will it ever be the same, or will we always sort of, be sort of, influenced by our experiences at this period, and Mogi will share some of the data there. And then finally, Clayton and Nicole will come back and just reflect a little bit about their own personal experiences as a couple, and that will be the wrap up of the session. So Annick, over to you.
Thank you, Sylvana. So I guess being the research director, I have a slight bent towards collecting data and analyzing data. I would like Mogi to share now the theory of change on the screen. That is the one that explains one of our points of differences with other programs, is that at the bottom we have our evidence base. So that's positive psychology, family leadership, strengths-based approach, and the family-centered practice. And at the top is where we want to get to, which the way that we want to build family capacity and capability is through their participation. Because it is through the now and next process that families realize what an impact they can have on their child achieving a good life. So we work with the three different columns that you see are the three groups of people that we work with. So starting on the right, it's the families who are participating in the Now and Next programs, and they move up to different workshops and to a global alumni network. As soon as they graduate, they become part of a bigger network. The column in the middle is the people who we have with us today. These are our peer workers who, as Sylvana was mentioning, people get invited to get more training and facilitate themselves, because as we are expanding abroad, as you will see later, we're already in 4 countries going on to 6. Well, our aim is not to go to all these countries to facilitate these programs, it's to build the capability locally, so to train the people, the parents in these communities. And I think that's particularly relevant for places like Australia also, where you have a lot of remote communities that if you could reach via train online, but they could be there on the ground with their community, that's really, really important. And the one on the right is, I guess, most of the audience here today is the professionals. We think that we have a responsibility to work together with the professionals and the families, because as change is happening, it's really important that professionals understand that they can now work with families that are collaboration ready. So it means that they can achieve more with these families who understand their role and their responsibility in the progress that their children make. So we do some training with facilitators. This theory of change also has numbers in it, and it shows in which one of these boxes we have published, presented, etc. at conferences. So further up you have the collective benefit mindset that explains for all these 3 groups what sort of groups and communities of practice will sustain this great advantage, this great impact. And then we do our evaluation, which I will just talk to, and Mogi also in a minute. So if you could just move to the next slide, Mogi, please. So there's one slide that I like, because in one glimpse we can see overall what the impact of the program is. These are 3 psychological factors, if you want. If you ask, well, what's the difference after parents go through, carers go through the program, what's the difference? So we measure their well-being, their empowerment, and their hope. And what you see in blue is the baseline before the program, and the part that is added is the part in orange. So you can see the percentage, people do report 23% more of well-being. The lines in gray are the top for this particular scale, so they differ. The particular well-being scale that was designed by Martin Seligman and Peggy Kern, that is our research associate. So that scale has 12 points. But the point here is to see that there is an increase. I mean, particularly look at the hope. people start with 6.4, but they add another 20% of hope. And that is, you know, a foundation of positive psychology, because parents who have a child with disability, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And that keeps you in the go for a long run. The overall program impact is rated as having added 32%. And all of these differences are statistically significant. So if you remember statistics 1-on-1, that is really difficult to prove statistical significance with human beings, because so many other factors can interfere when you do a pre and post factor. But so that's really all I will say for this type of program. And Mogi will also talk about the goal achievement. Here's another fun slide. I asked one of our parents to represent, so she's the one who designed Pictability, Jackie, to represent in her visual language what difference the program makes. And here are all the concepts of positive psychology. So bottom left, the vision setting is called prospection in positive psychology. And it's often a stage that that is not happening in families. We meet with a professional, and our first meeting is, what are your goals for your child? And that is very difficult for parents to answer that question out of the blue. So if you first answer, you know, if you first establish your bigger vision for your family and how does that fit, and where the child fits in, and how you want to advance all of that together, that's much easier, because the aim is to get to the top ones there that are flourishing. Through that, we need to develop active new partnerships with professionals, and I guess that's why, you know, talking to you is so important, because it is not an either or. We definitely need the professionals, but not for maintenance kind of work, more for the top, you know, once parents are informed and they know what they want, they know what their goals are, that's when the work of a professional is absolutely fantastic and comes to life. So parents feel that they're in a space rocket, and that, you know, it's the agency is fueling, is the main engine of their work and their how they advance in their learning. So the agency here is meant as the parents' belief and that they can make a difference in their child's life, and those signature strengths that Nicole was talking about before. So yep, I think we can move to the next slide. So that was just a quick, so positive psychology, another advances that positive psychology can make is the systems informed positive psychology framework. So we have the privilege of working with Associate Professor Peggy Kern from the University of Melbourne, and she is looking at all the parts of the system. So if we look at the parts of the system and we say, well, what needs to change in this part of the system? We talk about leverage points. We talk about those points in the system where with the least effort you can have the most impact. And we think, based on the theory that we've researched and analyzed, that those leverage points have to do with parents, that parents, you know, the way that the system is viewed, you know, all of us are parents, the way that the system is viewing the parents at the moment is not harnessing our ability to make a change. It's a lot, often parents are seen as perhaps grieving, and therefore, you know, that the professionals need to guide them and need to almost take over, you know, because they are the experts, and that's often what the parents also feel, and that was also talked about by Nicole before. But the truth is that there needs to be a rebalance, and parents can and will help this fundamental change in a system of disability that is needed, frankly, around the world. And so back to Sylvana to take us through a model for part of this system is the child voice, is to what extent the child voice comes through in the planning that is done for the voice. So Sylvana, would you like to explain this model, please?
I will in a moment, but Mogi, if you could just, we will pause for a moment, because if we could just go back to stop screen sharing for a moment and back to Annick, because I've seen that a question has popped up. I'm sorry, I can't recall who it was from, but Annick, we have a question. Could you please describe the assessment tools that we're using to measure the program outcomes?
Okay, so don't get me going.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
So we have empowerment, which is the beach center empowerment for parents who have a child with disability. We have the adult hope score, which is a scale that was devised by Rick Snyder. And we have the well-being profiler, which has the acronym of PERMA, P for positive emotion, E for engagement, R for relationship, M for meaning, and A for achievement. And all of this together is a battery of tests that we administer before this program starts and at the end of the program. We also check the goals of the families, and that I will let Mogi talk about that. And those tools are very robust. We also work with partners in change outcomes measure, PCOMs, so that we administer those at the beginning and at the end of each session, so to check both the impact of the program and the session. How did the session, how were people's session rating?
So I can, Anna, I'll just hand over to you for a moment. I can see that somebody has put up their hand, and I'm not sure, you know, if we're able to sort of take questions in that manner with this webinar, Anna. So just cue me to kind of carry on, or I think it was Jackie who'd put up her hand. So just cue me to either carry on, or shall we pause to just address Jackie's question? I'm not sure if Anna is there, so I'll make a decision. Mogi, if you just don't mind, go. Oh, there we go. Carry on, Jackie. So that was a mistake. Okay. Well, could you maybe Jackie, make a little mistake with a thumbs up or maybe a clapping? Awesome. So Mogi, if we could go back to screen share, and I'll just talk through a little bit about you know, Annick sort of talked a little bit when she talked about the theory of change model and how that sort of has guided what we're trying to do, which is, you know, this isn't about only working with parents. This isn't about only early intervention provided by professionals, but this is about how do we create stronger partnerships between professionals and parents. And that's really what drives us in the theory of change, to kind of make sure that we're staying true to kind of really building strong collaborative partnerships with families, where we're expecting families to show leadership and take initiative and to take greater control. And in our sector, I believe, you know, that I personally feel that we have always wanted increased participation of families, and we've always believed that we were very family centered. And I thought personally that what we did was enough to support family participation. But I guess one of the sort of reflections that I've had over the last 5 years is that sort of we should always keep pushing ourselves professionally to explore new ways. If we really believe in family centeredness, what does that mean? If we really believe in, you know, better, stronger collaborations and partnerships with families, what does that mean? So I guess, you know, thank you, Annick, for raising that, and for Nicole a little earlier on. And one of, you know, speaking of relationships, so one of the very important relationships is not just the parent-professional relationship, but also the family and child relationship. And so we put this model together to sort of to help to identify for families why are we talking to them about these things? Why should they bother? Why should they care about what we're talking about? And so we, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that on the bottom it says, left-hand corner, it says birth, and then it sort of goes, the little arrow goes up to 18. And what we're explaining to families is that the purpose of us as parents and the professionals who are working with us is to work together to support the voice of the child to increase. Children are not going to pop out at the age of 18 when they reach adulthood as being able to have choice and control and understand how to be independent. What we do as families, but also as professionals, and how we work in partnership, both with the child, but also with the family, how we all work to actually, you know, the ultimate aim is to get these wonderful, independent, capable young adults, but they're not going to get there by themselves. You know, in those very early years, on the left-hand triangle, that triangle represents the family triangle, and on the right-hand triangle represents the child. And as you can see, they're inverted. So in the early years, it is natural and sort of to be expected that families are sort of taking on the lead in terms of helping to interpret their child's behavior and communication, wants, likes, strengths, dislikes, etc. And that, you know, they're helping and you know, to coach their families, and we're helping to coach them on helping them to understand how to help their child to make choices so that they can start on this journey into adulthood, which is where parents do really want their child to go, but perhaps nobody's really articulated why it is that we're doing what we're doing now, so that we can help the family on their trajectory, so that along with their child and their family and any other professionals they'll work with in the future, you know, we won't be there, that they'll know where they're headed, which is, you know, up to 18, a child that can be, you know, independent and in control, as you can see in the top right hand, you know, corner of the right hand triangle. But in those early years, the child is sort of got a smaller role in terms of making choices because they're infants or very little, or because of the nature of their disability. But the big role there is for the family and professionals to be coaching the family. And then as we progress in that left-hand triangle, families, you know, families are learning, and we're supporting them, and they're understanding why now that it is important for them to be guiding their child to be able to make goals, and we're sharing as parents with the professionals, you know, who might be you know, school teachers at this time. We're helping our child's voice to be understood by these professionals who perhaps don't understand our child. So we're still mediating there. And as the triangle progresses, you know, according to everybody's, you know, unique circumstances, we're strengthening as parents partnerships to include the outcomes that our children want, so that we're helping our child's voice be front and center. And that, you know, hopefully by the age of 18, we're doing a lot less than we were when our children were very little, and we're much more consulting our child and being invited to join in when required, you know, and this is kind of like the general trend. It will be different for every family and child. We of course understand that, but it is important to appreciate and to explain to families that regardless of the nature of their child's disability, we don't know what they will be like when they're 18. And so we have to proceed now with the expectation that we're going to support greater choice, control and independence. And families need support along that journey, and professionals are a part of that support, but also other parents are a part of that support as well, and helping them to understand, learn and practice how to help give their child this voice. And on the right-hand triangle, as you can see, sort of the commensurate sort of flipping is smaller choices and opportunities when the children are infants and babies and little, but then gradually as they progress up the triangle, they're setting goals, they're understanding the outcomes of their goals, and then you know, into adult life, they are increasing in independence and control. So that model is something that we've been using with families to help them to understand why they should care beyond the here and now, you know, to understand the impact of what they're doing now is, you know, the here and now is not just the only thing. Where are we headed, and what are you going to do as a family to help your child to get there? What are you going to do as a family to actually progress through those layers yourself, because that's a journey in itself. And that's where we think that working with professionals and with peer workers is really going to be valuable. So thanks for that, Mogi. So I guess now I'd like to introduce you, Mogi, and you'll be talking in the next few slides about the research evaluation for the online Now Next program and how that's been operating.
Thank you, Sylvana. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm gonna, next few slides, I'm gonna walk you through a lot of numbers and statistics and charts. And I hope you all enjoy that, because I love that. I do enjoy that. And I am also grateful for the opportunity to contribute while I'm doing what I love doing. So as Sylvana mentioned in the program timeline, we piloted our online program, Online Now Next program, back in 2018. Since that first pilot, we have run 9 online groups Currently, we are running 3 more, so that totals up 12 online groups. And we have 46 families graduated from the online program. And we have also received more than 130 expression of interest to join online program from all over Australia and New Zealand. And why did we move on to online? Why did we try more online version? Because the online program gives us the opportunity to reach out to families who otherwise cannot come to the center to commit 8 sessions of face-to-face program. So we have had families joining from so many different places, not only from their homes, so from work office, from the car, and we even had a family, we even had a dad who joined us for a session from hospital while they were staying with their child. So end of last year, we evaluated our online program and compared its outcomes against our face-to-face program. And the main findings from the evaluation was online program works and families are achieving the same level of positive outcomes through online program as they would from the face-to-face program. So I'll share my screen. I'll walk you through my slides. Okay, this slide. This slide shows the comparison between online groups and our face-to-face groups. We call them global benchmark because we have run our programs in New Zealand, Canada, and Finland. So we have global database. And we are continuing to add to our database as well. So what we can see from this, this visual is that number one, average attendance rate for online program was 87.9%, which is actually higher than our global benchmark. And number two, second important point is completion rate of, on the other hand, was 63%, which is lower than the face-to-face groups. And we did some research and found out that this lower completion rate, and that, in other words, higher dropout rate, is expected in the online learning environment. So to sum up this visual, families were attending most of the sessions once they committed to the program, once they committed the first and second sessions. They were staying, they were engaging and attending most of the session. Okay, second, this slide, this is the goal study. As part of our evaluation of the program, we record the goals families formulate and work on during the program. We also record the achievements of the goals. So families have been achieving their goals at the rate of between 87 to 89% in online program, and which is a very encouraging and motivating result. And at the bottom, these 3 pie charts, they explain what families are prioritizing. In other words, what they want to achieve during the program. And next slide is Annick explained during her presentation that we use different measurement tools, and we use robust evidence-based tools to measure our outcomes. This is one of them. It's called PCOMS in short. It's Partners for Change Outcomes Management System. And this is a very short 4-scale questionnaire. Families fill this out beginning of every session. They rate themselves in terms of individually, in terms of how they are feeling individually, interpersonally, and socially, and overall. So this blue part here is our global benchmark, our face-to-face groups, and the greenish one is online groups result. So we can see that they both have the same upwards trends from the session 1 ending with much higher ratings at the session 8. Interestingly, online groups outcomes rating started lower than the global benchmark, and it ended also a bit lower than the global benchmark. But if we compare the session 1 with session 8, we can see that there has been a statistically significant increase for both online and face-to-face programs. Okay, this one is another PCOMS measurement, but this is group session rating scale. Families rate their experience of the session after each session, like both online and global. So this darker green one is global benchmark, and this lime green one is online groups. Like they both have very high average ratings in terms of relationship within the group, goals and topics they discussed, approach and method used, and overall satisfaction. So the maximum point of the scale is 10. And on average, families are scoring our sessions above 8 and 9 points. Yeah, and we can see here both for face-to-face and online groups, session 6 ratings are the lowest. And this is a session we give families a space to talk about their biggest worries and fears. So it's a session about circle of control, circle of influence, and letting go. So we found that families rate this session lower than the other sessions, probably because they're feeling raw and vulnerable. And then when we look at the next session, session 7, the ratings bounce back. This comparison graph shows the psychological empowerment scale comparison. At the top, we have our global benchmark result. At the bottom, we have online groups result. So this says how much we are empowering families. Doesn't matter if it's face-to-face group or an online group. Families report that they feel empowered throughout the program. We see statistically significant increase at the end of the program compared to the beginning of the program. Next scale we use is adult hope scale. It's here again, top 3 bars are for global benchmark face-to-face groups, and the bottom 3 are online groups results. Here we are seeing families left now in next program feeling a lot more hopeful. Their agency increased and their pathway improved. So very similar levels of increase compared to the beginning of the program. So on the graph, where is the increase? Where can we see the increase? This light blue here is the beginning of the program scores, and then this dark blue at the end of the bars, it is the increase. It is the increased result we measured at the end of the program. This is the final slide for me. So as Annick mentioned, we use Perma Profiler. We use positive emotions, we measure positive emotions, engagement and relationship, meaning and achievement, and also a few extra well-being subscales like health and negativity, happiness, etc. Except from negativity and loneliness, we want to see the increased result at the end of the program. And this is what we are seeing from the analysis. We are seeing that loneliness and negativity reduced. If you see these parts like 4.0, 4.6, and but then all other subscales, we are achieving higher increase, and the increased scores are statistically significant when we compare it to the beginning of the program to the end of the program. So again, here darker green areas are the increased scores, the difference between the beginning of the program and end of the program, and then top is face-to-face, and the bottom is online groups. So very similar outcomes from both versions of programs. I would like to hand it over to this beautiful family, Harry, Nicole, and Clayton. They're gonna take you through their family's journey as well as personal experience working as a peer worker and peer facilitator of the program. Nicole.
Thanks, Mogi. Clayton, you're muted, I can see.
Yeah. Well, that's the way you like me.
Did you want to have the slides, or did you want to have the screen to yourself?
I'll just quickly talk to the photo, and then you can take it down. So this little photo is us achieving one of our family goals, to spend some time together in the Blue Mountains. That's gorgeous Harry. He's not actually here right now. My lovely mum's got him next door because I probably couldn't concentrate with him being here. So we can take the slide down now if you like, Mogi. So you can see Clayton's big head. Yeah, so we were just going to talk through, I guess, our personal experience of the program. Obviously, Mogi's statistics are really important and are amazing. But I think it's also good to kind of hear a real life story. So Clayton, do you want to talk first about your personal experience to being dragged into Now and Next?
Dragged in? Yes, I was, wasn't I? Yes, I would. Look, the Now and Next program it's one of those things that you just don't know how much you need it until you've actually done it. And that's quite a difficult thing to get people to understand how important it is when you think you don't need it. I didn't need it. I thought I was being asked to go to something that was about how to set goals. Now, I know how to set goals, and every now and then I achieve them in my life, but I thought this is not something anyone could possibly really need to teach me. We've got a lot more important things to do with our son than this. Time is very precious. But all right, dragged kicking and screaming, or threats of living alone for the rest of my life, that sort of mild stuff. I went along, and I, as I said, it was, you know, we use this phrase a lot, I'm sure, but this was life-changing for me. And it was something that took us out of the world, or certainly took me out of the world of thinking firstly just about diagnosis, problems, and what needed to be fixed. And it took it into actually looking at a vision and a goal and what we wanted for our son. And it was just such an amazing mind shift for me to, instead of trying to fix things, think, what sort of life can we have? What goals do we need to set? And what resources do we actually have that don't involve just relying on the therapist to do all the work? So it was an amazing turnaround for me. and it wouldn't let go. And now I find that it's actually even more a part of my life now. And I'm very happy to be able to be a part of it and to present it to other people. But look, as a dad, it's we often think that we can fix things or that we should fix things, and I think that's okay. But I think it's really good to have the tools to be actually able to do it, and that's what I found it gave me. And it also meant that my wife was not the only one carrying the load of the research and making the decisions, that I was involved with it. That's probably enough from me for now.
Yeah, I'll talk to that a little bit more, because I think my story is similar to so many mums, particularly, not necessarily always mums, but often it's the mum. And I think before, Clayton and I used to work together a lot in the theatre world, and we were quite a team, and then when it was clear to me quite early with our chap that things were different, and we kind of stopped being a team. I definitely took on the research and the therapy, and the, you know, all of that was sort of my job, and Clayton's job was to go to work and to try and, you know, bring the income in, and it was very much, we stopped being a team. And it was really interesting giving ourselves that space and time to do the Now and Next program together as a couple, and to actually sit down for the first time since we probably had our son to go, what's important to us as a couple? How can we work together on this? What strengths does Clayton have that I don't have? And what strengths do I have that he doesn't have? Like, how can we balance this out and work together to make this work? The other thing I'd say, so that's in terms of our family. As an individual, I'd say that, you know, from the moment Harry was born, and particularly once we had the diagnosis, I felt very isolated. It was hard to get out to see family and friends with my son, and I was so busy with therapy sessions, and I actually hadn't spoken to many other families. So to actually go into a room and meet other families, and especially some that were further on in their journey, was incredible. Hearing about what Annick and Sylvana's sons were up to was incredible. And I remember pulling out in the Pictability kit, I pulled out an aeroplane, you know, thinking one day I might actually be able to get on an aeroplane again, but I don't think so. But I'll just put it on my vision board, because traveling is something that I've always loved. And yeah, when I just thought it was never going to happen. And then I remember Annick saying, it'll happen. And then like a year later, I was off to Ireland representing Plumtree with Now and Next as a peer worker traveling. So I guess the trajectory of where I was at when we first started with Now and Next, isolated, not even feeling like I could get out of the house or leave my son with anyone, to traveling across the other side of the world a year later is huge, and was huge for me on an individual level. But yeah, definitely the family experience of bringing Clayton along in as part of the team, and feeling confident enough to lead my therapy team, be the CEO of the team. You know, this is bringing us all together, and it's something that I definitely, the therapists that we were working with were aiming for me to be a participant. You know, they were awesome and wonderful, and were trying to get me to take the lead. But actually walking through the Now and Next program actually gave me the confidence, and going to Ireland and representing, being given that opportunity, coming back, it really landed for me. No, I can do this. I've got this. I had the confidence, and I had the skills, the tools to actually feel like I could lead our little team of awesome therapists. Should I tell this hot chip story now, Clay?
It's my favorite.
Okay. So when I came back from this amazing trip to Ireland and Sweden, and I remembered like on that flight home, I think just having that time to myself to kind of let everything from the last few years sink in. And I thought it's putting it all into place. And I got home, and Harry's loves hot chips. It's one of his favorite things. It's one of the only things he eats. He loves his hot chips. And we would go, like, as soon as I got home, we went to this hot chip shop, which we go to all the time. And normally I would just order the chips. And I thought Harry was pretty much non-verbal. I mean, he was verbal with us at home a little bit, but with other people outside of us, he wasn't talking much or anything. But I gave him the money and I said, Harry, go and ask Mary for some chips. And Mary's English is pretty poor, and she's pretty grumpy. She's busy. She's a hard worker. She does, I think, how many hours a week do you think she works? And she's always yelling with her husband there. She's grumpy. Anyway, Harry goes up to Mary, and between the two of them, they work out this exchange, and Harry gets his chips and gives, gets the change and all of that sort of thing. And I just sat there afterwards and I thought, that was probably more important, and he probably learnt more in that tiny little exchange than he has done in weeks of therapy. It's taking what he's learning in therapy and it's making it make sense to his everyday life, and it's connecting him to the community. Now, fast forward a couple of years, and he's now having conversations with Mary. They're good mates. He actually makes Mary smile, which is pretty cool. and he's also good mates with our cafe. He orders Mummy's large cappuccino and Dad's skim latte extra shot. He decides now that he needs large hot chips instead of just the small one that Mum used to buy. and here are the early steps. I think when we looked at Sylvana's, Sylvana and Annick's triangle of child voice, I feel like I didn't realize it was important initially that Harry needed to have that voice that young. Like, it was hard for him. It was much easier for me to order the chips. But wow, what a difference that made, that little exchange made. And it's certainly, that moment has really turned things around for us. And whenever we can now, it's about highlighting where Harry's voice is. There's so many amazing things that have happened for Harry, I think, because of what we've learned from this program. Sense of community, sense of what his strengths are. How can we take those strengths, his love of music? How can we take those things and use them in everyday life to not only elevate his sense of well-being, but achieve things that are important to him, are meaningful to him. And bring that into all the different environments that Harry's a part of. Is there anything you wanted to add, Clayton, that you think Harry's got out of us doing the program together?
I think that's probably enough. It's, I can't think of, I can think of lots of things that we all got from it, to be honest.
Yeah.
The one small thing I would say is it helps you are so overwhelmed when you get a diagnosis, I think. And as I think it said in that film I was watching earlier about researching every single night, but it was really, we were putting everything on hold, and it was causing more and more pressures to build up on you as a family. Little things like, I'm going to confess here, we hadn't done our tax for 3 years because that was just something that could wait for. All right, not good, but it could wait, but it was something that was building up, and it made us feel a little out of control, and that we didn't have our finances sorted. But these were things that pressure, and actually just setting small goals and making the time to have an hour where someone would be with Harry so we could look at our books. We could see our accountant. We could just get it done and tick that box and go, wow, 4 years of weight lifted. These little things, that was something that, it doesn't seem connected, but it's so connected to the program, is giving you a good life. Little things change the changeable, and be able to identify what you can do. So yeah, so many levels that it works on for family, self, and child.
Right, and was that your personal goal, the tax, filing your tax report?
Yeah, that was mine on the program. Yeah.
And we did it.
We ticked it off, but there were lots of little ones that we got to tick each week.
Yeah.
You know, and I never realized that I needed to arrange for my parents to look after Harry just for 2 hours. That was a luxury we thought we couldn't afford.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that was the goal to action tool in action. So in the goal to action, one of the windows that you look at is changes to the environment. And we thought, well, we actually can't get this done with Harry. So we had to change the environment, and then suddenly we could achieve the goal. So I would also say, just from my experience as a facilitator and seeing the changes it's made, I remember doing the first session Pictability where parents don't introduce their child with their diagnosis. They have to choose a character from a sheet, and they choose the character and they present their child with this character. This is my child's mascot, and think about, and they describe their children's strengths. And that's how they introduce their children. And I remember one woman, I'm getting goosebumps, it was an online session, and she said, I haven't felt this connected to my son as a person ever. And I remember yeah, just feeling like, yeah, because we are so focused on the deficits. We are so focused on our list of things we have to fix. And that's not how that relationship, if you feel that relationships are important, mother and child relationships are important for children to thrive and flourish, I think we all agree that's crucial, right? So I think that these little things are massive, and it's been such a privilege to learn from so many other families as I've facilitated programs, and as I've been able to train facilitators. It's been incredible watching every family grow, and yeah, it just yeah, that's all I have really. That's it from me. I guess we'll just move on, just to say I think we've mentioned it, that we have just started working with different other countries as well. So Annick and I have just completed a training of a brand new hub of peer facilitators over in Canada, and they've just run their own first now and next program, which was really cool to wake up very, very, very early and train some people on the other side of the world, and seeing the same outcomes, even though different country, different systems, but the core content still is so relevant over there. And watching those facilitators grow in confidence, it's been amazing.
Thank you, Nicole. It's Sylvana here again. Anna, I think that's brought our presentation to an end. We're a little ahead of time, which is great. We tried to be on time. Anna, that's us, and we're done. We'd like to thank you so much for inviting us to talk. Thank you, Mogi, Clayton, and Nicole, for your presentations. It's always awesome to hear you share your perspectives. And
can I
Anna,
ask some questions?
And the audience? Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask some questions?
Sure.
One of them is that I understand that you are online now with Now and Next, and how, if I was a professional working in an early intervention service, how can I link families to that program? What's some of the messaging I can use in conversation, and how can I access more information to get the wheels moving on that?
Well, at my details should be on the end of the presentation, which I think is going to be viewable by participants. Please feel free to contact me at any time, and I can provide further information, links to our specific URLs, etc. So really the best way is just come directly to me. There's of course our website, but if you're looking, you've got a fair idea of from today of what's covered on the website. If you'd like to get some details or look at how programs operate or how to move forward, please, as I said, my details are there, and don't hesitate to contact me.
Whoopsie. Still learning, even though it's my 3,000th webinar. The program, I'm sure it might differ, but is there a cost associated to it for people attending? Is that based on, is there any sort of information on that?
Yes, there is. Again, just to give a sort of ballpark idea, the cost of the course is based on the hourly rate, NDIS rate of $58.83, I think, although there's a slight change to that with the COVID levy on it. So it's basically working at that rate that is claimable by participants that are on the NDIS. So those that have NDIS funding are able to use that, and I can supply their line item, etc. for that. Outside of that, obviously, we look for funding to be able to offer it to those parents not at this time covered by the NDIS. Does that answer that? Or?
That does. I think it's really helpful for people to know that it can be, and people can use the NDIS plans to fund it, and that there's training online. I mean, there's the online program through you, but also there's the opportunity for organisations to go through the mentoring, like Nicole was talking about earlier.
Yeah, in the NDIS funding, in the capacity building budget, there is a line item called parent training. So you can use that line item to claim if you're gonna pay for the course. Yeah.
Yes, I quote it, but I may get the number wrong, but I think it's 115,038,0117.
Clayton, you're starting to sound like me, people that need to get a life, that know far too much about the NDIS price guide.
Yes.
The day I started playing price guide number bingo with a colleague was the day I realized I need to do something else with my life.
Yes, 287 pages of hell. I agree.
So I've just put out to the chat if there's any more questions that wanted to be raised here. If not, you have Clayton's email. You can join that. I feel like I'm stalking you often, Clayton, so people can join that list of getting all the information, not just for this program. I feel like you've got great wisdom for many things in life, so thank you. And to the rest of you, the team, thank you so much for today's session. I've learnt so much. I have just been sitting here glued to the screen with my hand like this, just amazed at the research and the outcomes, and then of course, my favourite things of all, the personal story, which really just puts it all into perspective.
Just wanted to say that we have time after time of carrying out the Now and Next program and being in touch with families that get empowered, we really have come to, to that conclusion, the cliche that sky is the limit, but it wasn't, it was a bit too cliche for us. So they suggest that the peer workers suggested to design space, because that is really the outer limit, and it is what I feel too every time I speak to Nicole, Mogi, Clayton, and all of the 40 or something peer facilitators that we've trained around the world. The realization suddenly that there's so much that they can do right now, and working with professionals better, and so it's really a great feeling. It's a really feel good.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So thank you all. Sorry, I've just got is that a question, Marlene? Could I have staff members? The question is, could I have staff members do the program with Plumtree as a way of moving forward with promoting this for our families, with a goal then to have it in-house? Nicole's bobbing up her head, so I'm going to throw to you.
So there's what we have is an experience. So Clayton might be able to talk to this more, but basically we've got a Now and Next experience, because what we did find is that telling people about the program is one thing, but it's a whole other level to kind of experience that. So we do offer a program called the Now and Next Experience for professionals, and professionals go through doing pictability, doing their own signature strengths, and obviously that can tap into, you know, their professional practice and that sort of thing, but it also gives them an overview of what it might feel like for a family who's going through the Now and Next process. And it definitely helps with getting buy-in from the staff, because we do know that with parents, as Clayton said at the start, it's actually really hard to know what you don't know, and explain to parents why they need to do the program. So actually having that in-depth experience yourself as a therapist, a professional, and then being able to kind of pass that on to families that you think could benefit from it, is really good. So yeah, we do have that.
So there's an experience program for Now and Next. There's also an experience session that you can do just on pictability, and then if professionals within your organisation wish, then you can do pictability and become a facilitator with that, which is a short program as well, but enables you to then be able to use that tool with families. So there's quite a few things, and like I said, I'm happy to talk with any organisation and see if there's anything we can offer or customise that fits.
And on that's a great segue into we later in the month will have a pictability teaser session, I think, Clayton, where you will host a bit of an engaging session, so you're able to see what that looks like. So we'll send that out. Just a couple of other things. If you haven't seen the calendar of events that we have for the month of May, I strongly support you to do that. And also, if you are on Facebook, there is a early child intervention Facebook filter, which you're encouraged to upload a photo of your family, just around promoting diversity of families in this month. So thank you all. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for people who keep showing up every time we host a webinar. It's an unbelievable way to connect in these times. It fills me with so much joy and just so much respect for the sector to continue to learn and want to evolve even in times that are challenging. So thank you so much. And to all of you for your generous time and wisdom. So, woohoo!
Thank you.
There's a hug through the
everyone.
screen.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.